They want you weak. They want you scattered, chasing trends, begging for approval, bleeding your energy into their empty vessels. Because the moment you learn to focus on yourself, you become their nightmare. Not violent, not dramatic, but precise, and precision terrifies the mediocre. Machiavelli knew what most men die never understanding. True power begins the second you stop caring what they think and start obsessing over what you build. The more you need their validation, the more you become their slave. The more you focus inward, the more they become insignificant. This isn't self-help. This is psychological warfare. Every opinion you chase steals your strength. Every argument you enter fragments your mind. Every trend you follow makes you common, until eventually you become just another voice in their chorus of noise. But here's what they never tell you. The world doesn't defeat you. You defeat yourself by drowning in their chaos. That's why self-focus isn't a luxury. It's your only weapon against a world designed to make you weak. Pull back, not with emotion, not with explanation, but with cold strategy. Let them react. You observe. Let them explain. You execute. Let them scream. You think. Focus isn't isolation. It's dominance without sound. It's ruling your inner world before they can colonize it. If you're done being their entertainment, if you're ready to become dangerous in silence, then understand this. From this moment forward, your attention belongs to you, and what you do with it will determine whether you remain their puppet or become the hand that pulls the strings. Rule 1. Distraction is the silent assassin. The deadliest enemy you'll ever face doesn't come with a sword. It comes with a notification, a headline, a dopamine hit designed to make you react instead of think. They don't need to destroy you anymore. They just need to keep you scrolling, because a distracted mind never builds empires. Look around you, everyone's busy, but nothing meaningful gets done. They're addicted to being informed but never transformed. They know everything about everyone else's life, but remain strangers to their own potential. That's not coincidence. That's design. Machiavelli warned, "He who controls the people controls their attention first." Today's rulers don't need armies. They have algorithms. They don't need chains. They have notifications. The moment you give them your focus for free, you've handed them the remote to your brain. Every time you pick up your phone without purpose, you fracture your mind. Every trend you chase, every opinion you absorb, every person's drama you entertain, you're trading pieces of your power for worthless noise, until there's nothing left to build your throne with. But here's what separates you from the masses. You're going to make your focus expensive. You're going to guard it like a fortress. You're going to cut off what drains you, even if it once entertained you, even if it once felt like connection. Because real power doesn't perform, it concentrates. The world wants your attention cheap. Your job is to make it cost them everything while giving you nothing in return. That's how you begin to win. And this leads us to something even more powerful, something that will make them question everything they thought they knew about you. Rule 2. Strategic withdrawal is your secret weapon. They'll notice the change first in your absence. You stop liking their posts. You stop responding immediately. You stop being available to their chaos. And suddenly they'll say you've become distant, cold, different. What they really mean is you've stopped being their entertainment, and that terrifies them. This is where most men break. They hear you've changed and immediately start explaining, defending, proving they're still the same. But that's exactly how they trap you back into their system. The moment you justify your evolution, you've already lost. Machiavelli understood strategic withdrawal better than any general. Sometimes it is better to be feared from a distance than loved up close. You're not avoiding people. You're avoiding their pollution, their confusion, their desperate need to keep you small. Every second you spend explaining yourself is a second stolen from building yourself. Your results will speak louder than your presence ever could. While they're busy talking about your absence, you're busy becoming someone who commands attention by giving none. This isn't retreat, it's regeneration. While others broadcast their lives for validation, you go dark. While they're performing for approval, you're recalibrating. While they're chasing attention, you're becoming someone who commands it by existing. Think about it. The most powerful people you know aren't everywhere. They're selective. They're not loud. They're decisive. They don't explain their moves. They make them. That's what strategic withdrawal creates: mystery, leverage, and respect. When you pull back, something shifts. People start wondering. They start noticing your silence. They start feeling your absence. And that's when you know the power has transferred from them to you. But here's where it gets even deeper, where you discover the psychology that makes leaders untouchable. Rule 3. The first to react is the first to lose. Power doesn't shout, it observes. Power doesn't argue, it calculates. Power doesn't explain, it executes. But weak minds? They react instantly, emotionally, predictably. And that's all it takes to lose everything. One emotional reaction, and you're back in their control. Watch how people try to provoke you. They don't do it because they care about the topic. They do it to see if they can still push your buttons. Every time you flinch, argue, or over-explain, you confirm their dominance over your emotions. You become readable, predictable, controllable. Machiavelli knew this truth. The first method for estimating a ruler's intelligence is to look at how he responds to chaos. In today's world, we measure a man's power by how unbothered he remains while surrounded by fools trying to trigger him. When they can't read you, they fear you. When they can't provoke you, they lose their leverage. Your silence becomes their confusion. Your calm becomes their threat. Because people don't know how to fight someone who doesn't react to their games. You must train your emotions like a weapon. No response unless it serves your strategy. No outburst unless it advances your position. No explanation unless it buys you power. Everything else stays locked inside. Let them guess. Let them drown in your stillness. This is why most people never touch real power. They're addicted to reaction, addicted to defending themselves, addicted to being understood. But the Machiavellian mind doesn't seek understanding. It seeks control. Here's the test. The next time someone tries to bait you into an argument, say nothing. Watch how uncomfortable it makes them. Watch how they try harder to get a reaction. That desperation, that's proof you're winning. And once you master this, you unlock something even more dangerous, the ability to build leverage while everyone else destroys theirs. Rule 4. Self-focus builds silent leverage. In every room, there are two types of men. Those who speak to prove something, and those who listen to learn something. One is performing, the other is collecting data, measuring weaknesses, identifying opportunities. Guess which one controls the outcome. Your self-focus is your forge. Every hour you spend sharpening your mind, instead of dulling it with distractions, every moment you invest in your skills instead of other people's drama, every choice you make for your future instead of their approval, you're not just growing, you're accumulating leverage. Machiavelli didn't obsess over fairness. He obsessed over influence. Here's the brutal truth. People only respect what they fear losing. When you become the man they can't manipulate, the man who doesn't need their validation, the man who walks away without explanation, you become irreplaceable. That's true power. Not popularity, not charisma, not being liked. It's psychological leverage built through obsessive self-discipline and strategic detachment. You want real influence. Disappear for 6 months and return 10 times stronger. Let them doubt you while you're gone. Let them forget you while you're building. Let them talk about your absence while you're creating your presence. Because when you return with results instead of excuses, with skills instead of stories, with value instead of validation seeking, they'll remember you differently. They'll talk less and listen more. Not because you changed your words, but because you changed your worth. Here's what most men never understand. You don't compete with others. You make yourself so focused, so disciplined, so relentlessly improving that competition becomes irrelevant. When they're arguing for status, you're building substance. When they're demanding attention, you're making your absence expensive. The moment you stop needing anything from the outside world starts needing everything from you. That's how leverage shifts. That's how power transfers. That's how legends separate themselves from the crowd. But building leverage requires something most men can't stomach: killing their need to be seen. Which brings us to the most uncomfortable truth. Rule 5, the need to be seen is the chains they use. Most people don't chase power. They chase attention and confuse the two. They want to be noticed, praised, validated, seen. But here's what destroys them. The more you need to be seen, the easier you are to control. Because when your self-worth depends on their applause, you're not dangerous. You're desperate. Validation is a leash disguised as affirmation. It doesn't choke you. It seduces you. It makes you believe you're winning, while it leads you exactly where they want you to go. The algorithm feeds you praise when you're predictable and starves you when you're real. That's not support. That's programming. Think about this. How many great men do you know who post everything they do? How many powerful people you respect need constant feedback to function? None. Because they understand what you're about to learn. The need to be seen is the death of becoming someone worth seeing. Machiavelli built influence in shadows, not spotlights. He knew that the moment you depend on others for your sense of self, you've already surrendered the only thing that matters: your independence. If you need their eyes on you to feel important, you've lost the war for your mind. That's the harsh reality most will never escape. They walk around starving for approval, unaware of how exposed they've made themselves. Their confidence dies with one negative comment. Their energy collapses when ignored. Their entire mood depends on someone else's reaction. That's not personality. That's programmable behavior. And programmable men are never powerful men. But there's another path, harder, lonelier, but the only one that leads to real strength. You must learn to validate yourself through execution, not exhibition, through progress, not performance, through results, not recognition. When you accomplish something difficult, don't announce it. Let it build inside you. When you make a move, don't broadcast it, but let it speak later. When you succeed, don't chase congratulations. Let your growth do the talking. The man who needs to be seen never builds anything lasting because he's too busy performing to stay focused. He becomes a puppet, dancing when praised, breaking when ignored. But the man who builds in silence, he becomes the force they never saw coming. There's a cost to this path. People will misunderstand you. They'll call you arrogant, distant, cold. Let them. That's the price of independence. Because while they waste energy trying to figure you out, you're using that same energy to become unfigurable. This transformation requires mastering something most men fear more than failure itself. Rule 6. Discipline is your invisible crown. Weak men wait for motivation. Strong men operate from systems. But the untouchable man? He doesn't hope to feel ready. He decides to be ready, daily, without emotion, without excuse. Because in the game of power, discipline isn't a habit. It's your invisible crown. Look around. Everyone's busy, but nobody's effective. They have goals without routines. They burn energy without direction. They mistake motion for progress. But you're different. You're not here to be busy. You're here to be unstoppable. Machiavelli understood that before you can command others, you must command yourself. The first battle isn't with your enemies. It's with your own inconsistency, your own excuses, your own tendency to negotiate with comfort. Time is power, and most people are powerless because they don't control their hours. They wake up when they feel like it. They work when they're forced to. They are slaves, not to chains, but to their own lack of structure. Your discipline must become sacred, not for show, not for social media, but because your mission demands it. You wake up not because of motivation, but because excellence requires it. You train your body not for appearance, but because weakness is a liability in any war. Every controlled hour is a weapon. Every completed task is ammunition. Every routine you refuse to break becomes a wall between you and the mediocrity that once defined you. While they chase comfort, you chase control. This isn't about perfection. It's about predictability to yourself. When your body knows what to do before your mind can resist, you've transcended the ordinary. Your day becomes an extension of your will, not a reaction to your feelings. There is no freedom without structure. The freest man is the one who has mastered limitation. He doesn't waste time on options. He has systems, routines, cold precision that kills confusion and destroys hesitation. People sabotage themselves with randomness. They set goals, but build no repeatable behaviors behind them. They chase motivation like children chase fireflies, hoping it returns tomorrow. But it never does, because motivation is for spectators. Systems are for kings. You don't need to feel inspired to dominate. You need to execute regardless of how you feel. That's discipline. It's not glamorous, not exciting, not fun. But it's what separates men who watch time slip away from men who use time to carve their destiny. The more structure you build, the less chaos can enter. The more ordered your inner world becomes, the less the outside world can disturb it. That's your fortress, built not from stone, but from daily choices that most men are too weak to make. But discipline alone isn't enough. You need something darker, something that makes you completely unreadable. Rule 7. Emotional detachment is your silent superpower. The most dangerous man in any room isn't the loudest. It's the one who feels everything but shows nothing. He doesn't react. He doesn't flinch. He observes with surgical precision while others bleed emotion everywhere. That's the man who terrifies them. Here's what they'll never teach you. Emotions aren't the enemy, but emotional reactivity is suicide. The second they know what triggers you, they own you. The second they see you flinch, they adjust their strategy. The second they realize they can make you explain yourself, the power transfers to them. You don't win by feeling more. You win by separating feeling from decision-making. When they scream, you listen for information. When they insult, you calculate their desperation. When they try to trigger you, you stay still and watch them reveal their hand. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." Why? Because love expects you to feel, to give, to soften. Fear respects boundaries. It obeys silence. It doesn't negotiate. Emotional detachment isn't numbness. It's unavailability to manipulation. You don't remove emotions. You master them. You decide when to feel and when to fold those feelings like weapons in your coat. Carried but never displayed. Watch the people around you. They're drowning in their own reactions. They speak before thinking. They argue before understanding. They burn bridges because they confuse impulse with strength. But the emotionally detached man burns nothing. He lets people burn themselves while he remains untouched. You want control? Then detach, not with bitterness, but with strategy. Stop arguing with fools. Stop trying to be understood by people who profit from your confusion. Stop reacting to every shift in tone, every test of your boundaries. This is what separates the average from the elite. Average men are owned by their emotions. They text back when provoked. They raise their voice when disrespected. They seek closure from people who gave them chaos. But elite men close doors without sound. They walk away not because they're weak, but because they know some wars aren't worth the energy. You have to train yourself to sit in discomfort, to feel rage and not act, to feel insulted and say nothing, to feel abandoned and not chase. Every time you resist the urge to react, you sharpen your mind. You become the storm they never saw coming. Most men collapse because they still crave emotional comfort from the very people who feed them pain. They want closure from liars, validation from betrayers, understanding from crowds. But the Machiavellian man wants none of that. He wants results, not reconciliation. Once you become detached, people notice. They feel your shift. They sense your stillness. They don't know what you're thinking, and that mystery makes them nervous. Because a predictable man can be controlled, but a man who shows nothing terrifies them. This detachment leads to something even more powerful, the ability to disappear completely. Rule 8. Solitude is where legends are forged. Most people run from solitude like it's poison. They call it loneliness. They fear the silence. They panic when no one texts, when the room gets quiet, when they're left alone with their thoughts. That's where they break, not from external pressure, but from their own fear of meeting themselves. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. Solitude isn't punishment. It's preparation. It's not where you lose yourself. It's where you find the version of you that nobody's ever seen. The version that doesn't need voices, attention, or validation. The version that doesn't need an audience because he's too busy becoming dangerous. You can't build real power in noise. You can't gain clarity surrounded by people who drain your energy. You can't develop your mind when it's constantly scattered across 10 different directions. Solitude strips all that away. The fake people fall off. The distractions fade. All that remains is you, raw, real, and uncomfortable. That discomfort, that's the beginning of your transformation. Machiavelli wouldn't tell you to seek company when your mind is weak. He'd tell you to retreat, not to escape, but to evolve, to pull back from the crowd, to become mysterious to those who no longer understand your silence, to create a life so solid it doesn't need explaining. Most men try to heal in the presence of the people who broke them. That's why they never evolve. They stay available, emotionally accessible, owned. The Machiavellian man disappears, not to sulk, but to sharpen, not to cry, but to calculate. He's not gone, he's transforming. Solitude is resistance training for the soul. It teaches you to be alone with your thoughts without letting them destroy you. It forces you to meet the unfiltered version of yourself, the one you hide behind distractions, relationships, and noise. Once you face that version and don't break, you gain something rare, self-command. You must become emotionally self-sufficient, your own anchor, your own source of strength. Because the man who depends on no one for his inner peace is a man no one can destroy. Here's what your enemies pray you never discover. If you ever fully embraced solitude, you'd become untouchable. That's why they keep you busy, social, available. They need you scattered to keep you controllable. In solitude, you hear truth, not opinions, not distractions, but truth about your patterns, your weaknesses, your wasted potential. Most men run from that because facing it means change, discipline, discomfort. But that's the price of power, and only the serious pay it. Your solitude must be strategic. Don't isolate to hide. Isolate to construct. Build your body, study your mind, audit your circle, break your addictions. Every day in silence must be a step toward power, not escape from responsibility. Yes, they'll talk. They'll call you cold, disconnected, strange. They won't understand why you disappeared. Perfect. Let them guess. Because when you return, they'll realize you weren't avoiding them. You were surpassing them. The lion doesn't announce his preparation. He disappears, watches, learns, and returns faster, stronger, lethal. That's what solitude builds. While they chase attention, you chase alignment. While they need the crowd, you need only your discipline. This period of isolation leads to the final transformation, one that changes everything. Rule 9. Evolution is your ultimate victory. You've been quiet, focused, alone, not broken, rebuilding. They thought you disappeared from weakness. What they couldn't see was the old version of you dying and a weapon being forged in its place. Now you're different, not louder, not angrier, just sharper, colder, more precise. Not because you're heartless, but because you've realized how much energy you wasted trying to be understood in a world that rewards manipulation over truth. You don't want revenge anymore. You've transcended that need. Because now you understand what Machiavelli lived by. You either protect your peace completely or eliminate anything that threatens it. There is no middle ground. You used to seek explanations. Now you create silence. You used to prove yourself. Now your results do the talking. You used to beg for understanding. Now you are the force that doesn't need to be understood. That's what self-focus creates. It kills the weak version of you with precision and births someone who doesn't explain. He dominates. This, it isn't cruelty. This is completion. You no longer chase understanding from people who profit from your confusion. You no longer apologize for outgrowing those who stayed small. You no longer invite chaos into your world just to feel connected. You've mastered solitude. You've turned silence into strategy. You've stopped reacting, stopped explaining, stopped bending for people who would never do the same for you. In that discipline, you've become unreadable, unstoppable, untouchable. Let them whisper about the change. Let them question your evolution. Let them reach out with the same manipulation you've already studied in silence. This time, you don't respond. Because when they no longer have access to your mind, they lose control over your future. Self-focus has created something they can't compete with: presence without performance. You don't chase status, you embody it. You don't argue for power, you radiate it. You walk into rooms and change the atmosphere through energy alone. Not through words, but through certainty, control, composure. You don't need to harm those who wronged you. They have to live with what they lost and what you've become. That's the most silent form of victory. You don't need their regret. You don't need closure. Their punishment is watching you thrive without them, in silence, beyond their reach. You've escaped the cycle, the chaos, the emotional manipulation, the invisible chains that pulled you back every time you tried to rise. You've burned those chains. In their place, you've built a system, cold, calculated, relentless. Now everything is intentional, every hour protected, every word measured, every move calculated. When people try to pull you back to your old self, they're met with distance, boundaries, silence, because that version is dead, buried beneath every disciplined morning, every hard choice, every moment of strategic solitude. You're not motivated, you're systematic. You're not emotional, you're exact. You're not interested in revenge, you're too evolved for it. That's what Machiavelli would respect. Not the man who reacts, but the one who rises so far above the noise that he becomes unreachable, unknowable to those who once thought they had him figured out. If they try to return, you don't attack, you don't defend, you don't speak. You simply no longer exist in their reality, because you now operate in a realm they can't enter. That is evolution so complete, they can't even recognize their former victim. Your mind is a fortress. Your time is sacred. Your presence is rare. You've become what the world fears most. A man who needs nothing from anyone but chooses everything with surgical precision. So what now? You keep building in silence. You protect your peace like a weapon. You study while they sleep. You plan while they gossip. You execute while they doubt. Because every day you stay on this path, you're increasing the distance between who you were and who you're becoming. You don't return to weakness. That man served his purpose and died in the transformation. He's been replaced by someone who doesn't flinch, doesn't fold, and doesn't fail himself anymore. You've become the silence they can't decode, the calm they can't disturb, the force they can't control. If you've walked this entire journey, from distraction to discipline, from chaos to cold precision, then you understand. The ultimate power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't seek applause. It doesn't need recognition. It simply exists, transforms everything around it, and rules through presence alone. Focus builds dominance, and dominance, once achieved, speaks only through results.